we are going to go over the naming of amines, amides, nitriles, esters, and also organic acids. So we're going to start with amines. Now, an amine is more a derivative of ammonia, where we've got nitrogen, which is going to be bonded to some groups. We know nitrogen has got two lone pairs. Okay, so that is how it's going to be. So these groups can be either a hydrogen and just a group of carbon atoms, or they can all be different groups of carbon atoms. But how do we get to name amides? So we need not to think they're the same with amides. They are different. So let's start with a very simple one, where I've got CH3 and then NH2. Well, how do we get to name this one? So for this amine in this case, not amide, which is here, it is only linked to one carbon. In other words, it's in this form where we've got nitrogen, hydrogen, hydrogen, and then linked to a carbon like that. We can as well write it as NH2 and then just get to put a line, meaning a carbon, it's a methyl group present there. So how do we get to name it now? So simply check how many carbons are present. It is only one, so that is meth. We know that was supposed to be methane, but we are going to remove this thing which is here from methane, ANE, and then put amine. So that is going to be the name, methanamine, methamine, methamine. So that is going to be the name for that one. Same, let's see how we can name this one. So just count how many carbon atoms are present. We have got 1, 2, and 3. We always need to count in the direction that gives us a lower number to this one. So this is going to be pro because there are 3 carbons. It was supposed to be propane. I'm going to remove the E at the end. Put the position of the amine. It is a position number what? Number 1. And then put the word amine at the end. So that is going to be the name. Propan 1 amine. So it can also be, let's check out this one. How do we name it? First thing, we're going to name this, we're going to number the carbon chain 1, 2, 3, 4. And so at position number 2, we've got an amine. So firstly, this one has got 4 carbons, so that is going to be a butane. I'm going to remove the E at the end of butane, put the position of the amine, and then write the word amine there. So butane 2 amine. And what if we've got amine at one end, and then we've got an OH. Now here we need to go to the priority list, and OH, an alcohol, has got higher priority than an amine. So when naming, we're going to start from where the alcohol is. So that is how it's going to be. So it has got 3 carbons. And we're going to name the amine as a group at position number 3. So we're going to say 3 amino. And then this chain has got 3 carbons, that is prop. It was supposed to be propane. I'm going to remove the E at the end, put the position of the alcohol, position number 1, and then put O. So that is going to be the name then for this one. And what if we've been given nitrogen? Let's say we've got something like this. How do we get to name it? Well, priority even here is given to the OH. So this is going to be the parent chain. So let's just get to number it. 1, 2. And then to the nitrogen, we have got 2 groups which are attached to it. And it has got 2 carbons, as we can see. So we're going to first name the groups which are attached to this compound, which is attached to the nitrogen. And we're going to give them the position. So when they are attached to carbon, if something is attached at carbon number 1, we say 1 comma 1, maybe another something is attached to position number 2, 1 comma 2. But because it's attached to a nitrogen, is going to be named as n comma n. We are saying n comma n because we've got two things which are attached to nitrogen, and then they are the same, so that is going to be diethyl. And then at position number 2, the whole of this compound here is acting as a group. So at position number 2, we have got what? An amide. And whenever it's acting as a group, we call it amino, because OH has got higher purity than it. And then the whole chain contains only 2 carbons, so that is going to be named as ethane. We're going to drop the E at the end of ethane and then put the position of the hydroxide one and then put O at the end. So that is going to be the name. And what if we add this? How do we get to name it? In the same way as we've just done the previous one, you name the longest chain, position number 1, position number 2. And then here on the nitrogen, we've got also some other groups. And remember, the parent chain is going to be an alcohol because OH, an alcohol, is higher in purity than an amine. And so to the amine, we've got something attached. We've got two methyls and then one ethyl. So first state the ethyl because it comes first in the alphabet. So we are going to say N ethyl, and then to N we have got two other groups. So that will be N comma N. That will be dimethyl. And then now we name this one, which is an amine. So that will be 2 amino. The whole chain has got only 2 carbons, but there's a double bond. So instead of being an ethane, it is an ethene. So that will be ethene. Okay. Again, we need to state the position of the double bond. So I'm going to say, just when we are naming, think of this one. When you want to name this one, it comes from ethane. You drop the ane, so it becomes eth, and then state the position of the double bond, that is 1, and then put n. So that is how we are going to name also. So that will be eth, and then at position number 1 we have got a double bond. So 1 and then n. So eth, it was just supposed to be ethane, but because we've got a double bond anyway, if it was much longer, it would have had a lot of carbons. But I want us to see something here. There's no need of us putting the position of the double bond. The reason is very simple. One have 2 carbons here. So there's nowhere else where we can place that double bond unless if we add a lot of carbons. We can change the placement. So just say ethene. But I'll drop the E at the end because this is not an ethene. Then put the position of what? The alcohol, position number 1, and then put O. So that is going to be the name for this one. So now, how do we get to name amines if we've already understood how to name amides? Now let's consider, how do we name? We've seen how to name amines, but we want to name amides. Well, amides are more like amine, except we have got a carbon double bonded to oxygen, which is attached now to the nitrogen, which is bonded to hydrogens. So this is an amine plus a carbonyl that gives us amide. So now let's go on and get to name them. We see how to do it. Let's say we have got this one. So this is one group here, an amide group. How do we get to name this one? or just count how many carbons are in the longest chain. 1. So we don't start. There's a carbon here, which of course even you can't see it, but we can see it because we know skeletal structures. So we've got 4 carbons here. This is going to be a butane. I'm going to drop the E at the end of butane, and then I'll put the word amide. So that is going to be the name, butanamide. And same, let's see if we have got something very simple, just this one. Well, how do we name it? We can see it's so direct, but how do we just get to name it? We need just to see how many carbons are present in this compound, and then we'll be able to name it. We have got only 1 carbon and 2 carbons here, so this is going to be ethane. From ethane, I'm going to drop the E at the end, then put amide. So that is going to be ethanamide. And what of, let's consider this one. 1, 2, then double bonded to oxygen like that. We have got NH, then we've got something that is bonded also this side. Okay, so how do we get to name this one? So let's first number it. We've got 1 carbon here, 2 carbons here. But also to the amide, there's something that is attached. We have got also an ethyl attached to the amine. Okay, so to be able to name, we are first going to name this group, just this group which is here. It is attached to the amine, so we're going to give it position N. So that will be N ethyl. And then here, how many carbons do we have? We only have 2 carbons in this case. 1, 2. So that will be ethane. But I'll drop the E at the end and then put amide. So that is going to be the name, N-ethyl ethanamide. So they are really simple when it gets to naming these compounds. All we need to understand is, how do you get to name the carbon chain with 3 carbons, 4 carbons, 5 carbons, and just like that. And if we just get to understand that, then we can name anything of these. Well, let me get some other questions to see how we are able to work them out. How do we get to name this one? Okay, it's like that. How do we get to name it? Now let's consider how many carbons are present. So we have got 1 carbon here, 2 carbons here. We have got a methyl and a methyl there. So we're going to first name these because they are groups. So I've got N comma N. This is dimethyl. And then now we're going to name this one. It has got only 2 carbons, so that will be ethane. Remove the A at the end and then put amide. So that is going to be the name, just like that. I'm going to give another one here, but let's say we've got something like this. Well, how do we get to name it? Now whenever we've got, actually I've even put something else. It's like that. Okay, how do we get to name this one? This group which is here is an amide group. What of this one? Whenever we've got a 6-membered ring with alternating double bonds, that is a benzene ring. But whenever a benzene ring is acting as a group, we call it a phenyl. So this is a phenyl because it's a group. The main chain is going to be this one. So we'll call it as phenyl. And then we name this. How many carbons are present? Only 1 carbon. So that is going to be Okay, so that will be methan. I'll drop the E at the end and just put amide there. So phenylmethanamide, that is going to be the name. So basically that is how we get to name amides. What else are we supposed to learn naming here? So let's consider how to name nitriles. So nitriles, they've got a carbon triple bonded to a nitrogen. We can also call this as cyanide, cyano. So that is the functional group for nitriles. But how do we get to name them? Let's consider something. We have got CH3, CH2, and then C triple bonded to nitrogen, like that. So to name this, just consider how many carbons are in the longest chain. 1 carbon, 2 carbons, 3 carbons. So we see that the carbon of the nitrile is also part of the naming of the chain. And so this is going to be propane. We'll just write the name propane. That is because we've got 3 carbons. And then just put nitrile at the end. So propane nitrile, that is going to be the name for this one. And how do we get to name this one? Well, first need to understand how many carbons are in the longest chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even if we take this direction, there will still be 6. So to be able to name, first we are going to name the group which is down here. That is an ethyl group at position number 4. So that is 4-ethyl. And then this is the hexane because it has got 6 carbons. Hexane. And then put nitrile at the end. So that is going to be the name. And what of this one? Now in a case where we've got more than one nitrile functional groups, or it is a chain, when we are numbering it, we will not number starting from the carbon of the nitrile. Simply number this one: first carbon, second carbon, third, fourth, fifth, and also sixth. So these will be just alone like that. Will not number the carbon of the nitrile. So to be able to name this one, we'll simply state the positions of the nitriles. We have got at position number 1, position number 3, position number 5, and then this one has got 6 carbons, so that is hexane. And then we'll put tri, but because we didn't count the carbons which are present in the nitrile, we'll not name it just like nitrile. I'll put tri there because there are 3 of them, so we're going to put carbo in front because we've got a carbon which we're not naming, so that will be carbonitrile. So that is going to be the name. We can as well say hexane 1, 3, 5 tricarbonitrile. So you can just name it just like this one, the way it is. So what if we've got this? And same way when we're naming a nitrile where we have got a ring, we'll not name the carbon which is now bonded to the nitrogen. Just consider how many carbons are in the ring. In this case, there are only 5 carbons. So the name here is going to be cyclopentane, and then put carbonitrile. I was looking at this one. I didn't put Ni. I just said trio. So that is carbonitrile. Okay, so that is how you get to name that. Let's look at another one. How do we get to name this compound here? Now we have got also a triple bond, but priority is given to the nitrile. So this will be position number 1, position number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, and 6. Well, I'm counting even the carbon of the nitrile because only one. So there was only one nitrile here. So to name this compound, I'll first state the position of the triple bond, that is position number 5, and then say exenonyl. Exene. It is exene because it was supposed to be exene, but because there's a triple bond, it is exene. And then state now the nitrile. So that is the name. Or we could have said hex, put the position 5 ion nitrile. So we could also say like that. Okay. And let's look at one more or just two more before we can finish about nitriles and then look at esters. So let's consider this compound and how do we get to name it? So as we can see, we have got three nitrile groups. Just the same like the one we did earlier, but it's just a different representation. So in case we find it and it seems as if it's different, well, it's just the same. There's a carbon here triple bonded to a nitrogen. This is a nitrile. I could have just written this one here as NC. That's the same thing. So just in case we found it. So this will be position number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7 there. Okay, so we have got 7 carbons in the longest chain. So this will be what? Hepty, heptane. And then set the positions of the nitriles at position number 1, position number 4, position number 7, and then try. So I'll put carbo and then say nitrile because we've not counted the carbons in the nitrile. So that is going to be the name. And now let's consider the last one in this one. Let's consider this one. How do we get to name it? Well, it might look cumbersome or trick, but it's as simple as everything that we've done. So you can also try it out and see if you're able to answer it. So the first thing is we're going to name the longest chain. We're going to number the longest chain. And how many carbons are going to be in the longest chain? So we've got the first carbon here, carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4, and carbon number 5 there. But why have we started in the direction that we started in? What if we had started in the other direction, starting at carbon number 1 here, carbon number 2 here, carbon number 3 here? So if we started in that direction, we see this one will be given a higher number to be carbon number 4. This will be carbon number 3. So it's better to start in the direction that gives you lower numbers to your groups of higher priority. So first name the groups which we have here. We've got this group. We also have this group. So this is going to be at position number 1, we've got an ethyl. At position number 4, we have got a methyl. And then at position number 4, this is where a double bond is. So 4 pentene. And then now, put now the positions of what? The nitriles at position number 1, position number 2, position number 3, position number 5. These are 4, so we'll say tetra. But we didn't count the carbons in the nitrile, so tetracarbonitrile. So that is going to be the name. We can also name it as 1-ethyl, 4-methyl. Instead of me first stating the position of the pentyl, I'll just say pent and then say 4n, and then now put another dash 1, 2, 3, 5 tetra carbonitrile. So that also is going to be the name for this one. Well, we are done with nitriles. Let's consider how to name esters. So there's a difference between an ester and an ethane, so we should not confuse those two when we are naming them. For esters, esters have got a functional group, a carbon double bonded to oxygen, and then there is also an O, something like that. Okay. Esters come from carboxylic acids when they react with alcohols. So that is why they even have that functional group which is shown there. So let's see how to name them. So there will be a group of carbon atoms this side and also a group of carbon atoms this side. So always when you are naming, you first start by naming what came from the alcohol before you can name what came from the acid. So let's consider this one. How do we get to name it? So which portion here? So let's first number the carbon atoms. We've got carbon 1, carbon 2. This side we've got also carbon 1, carbon 2. Well, we always start from naming this side, which is linked to the oxygen. And we've got 2 carbons, so that is going to be called, we'll just name this. That is a what? Ethyl. And then we'll just name this one also. It is also ethyl, but we'll not name it as ethyl, we put noate. So ethyl ethanoate, that is going to be the name for this one. And how about this one? Okay, so let's count the carbon atoms which are present in this compound. 1 carbon, 2, 3, and 4. And then this side we've got 1, 2, and 3. So to name, first start by naming this side which is on the oxygen. Well, we shouldn't have only this thing in mind like this, because at times we can put the oxygen this side and then a carbon double bonded to an oxygen will be this side. So shouldn't confuse us. Always start by naming this portion which has got the oxygen. So 4 carbons, that is a butyl. So this is going to be butyl. And then 3 carbons, that is a prop. So propanoate. So that is going to be the name, butyl propanoate. What of this one? And the first thing that we need to do when we want to name these compounds is to identify the functional groups which are present, because some functional groups can be deceptive. When this one is alone, we are going to call that as an amine. But when it is together with a carbon, double bond with a carbon, that will no longer be an amine, but what? An amide. So we need to also pay particular attention to those, otherwise they can be also kind of deceptive and they will make us end up writing the wrong thing. Okay, so let's be able to name this one. And the first thing that we're going to do is to count how many. So we can see this point here. There's a separation of this portion from this portion, which is this side. And so this one, there's only one carbon. But what of this side? So if this one was just like this would have been an ether, but there's a double bond with another carbon to oxygen, so it's no longer an ether but an ester. But when this one wasn't there, if this group was at this position, it would have been an ether. So we need to pay particular attention to the group. So we have got one carbon here, two carbons here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so I'll first name this portion which is attached to the oxygen. That is a what? A methyl. And then now we are going to name this other compound this side. So, and we've got groups there. We've got amine at position number 7. That's the one which comes first in the alphabet. So 7 amino. And then this is a ketone. We name it as bromo. I mean as oxo. Bromine, we're going to name it as bromo. B, we know it comes second in the alphabet. So at position number 4, we have got bromo. And at position number 5, we have got oxo. And then we can now name the whole chain with 8 carbons. So a chain of 8 carbons is called octane. But we are going to name it, because this is not an alkane but an ester, so that it will be octanoate. Put O-N-O-A-T-E. So that is going to be the name for this one. So basically that's how we get to name these. So the last thing that we're just remaining is to name acids. So how do we name organic acids or carboxylic acids or alkanoic acids? However much you want to address it, so it's the same thing. How do we get to name them? So for these acids, they end in COO and then OH like that. So that's how they get to name, but end, not name. How do we get to name them? Let's consider a very simple one. CH3, CH2, C double bonded with oxygen, and then OH. We'll just count the carbons which are present in this compound. 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 carbons. This is going to be called, okay, 3 carbons, that is F, just a moment. Okay. So 3 carbons, that is a prop. So that this is going to be called propanoic acid. That is going to be the name. Now, let's say we have got something where we've carbon bonded to a carbon, and then here we've got like that, and then even this side we've got like that. Well, how are we going to name this one? So we can just try to think about it for a moment, and if it can come in the mind, you can try to name it before you can even check out what the name is going to be. So to name this one, we have got, this is an acid functional group. Even this one is an acid functional group. So we have got two acid functional groups, position number 1 and position number 2. So whether we change them, it will still be the same. So this is going to be named as eth because we've got two carbons. Ethane, so it's supposed to be ethanoic acid, but what I'll do is I'll say ethane before I write oic acid. Because we have got two of these, I'll not just say ethane just as we did here propane. We remove the e from the propane and then put oic. I'll not remove the e, just like we did also on alcohols and also others like ketones. So this is going to be ethane. I'll put the e there at the end when you've got more than one groups, and then put oic. Now before I put oic, because these are two, I'll put di. So that will be ethane dioic, and then put acid. For the acid, there should be a space because it's not one name together with just the other one. Let me see if I can get some more questions that you can try out. Okay, let's name this one. How do we get to name this compound? So the first thing is we need to find out how many carbon atoms are present in this compound in the longest chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 5 carbon atoms. But at position number 3, we've got an ethyl group. So this is going to be 3 ethyl. And then what remains has got how many carbons? 5 carbons. So that is going to be just named as pentanoic acid. So that is going to be the name for this one. What of this one? Let's consider it. How do we get to name this compound? How many functional groups are here? Well, we've got an acid functional group, an amine, and also an alcohol, and also an aldehyde. But we know that priority is going to be given to the carboxylic acid because it has got higher priority than anything else. And so the rest are going to act as groups. So this will be position number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 there. So name them in alphabetical order. Amine is the first one because of an A, so 2 amino. Hydroxide follows, 3 hydroxy. And then position number 5, we've got a aldehyde, but we name them as oxo as a group. And then we name the whole chain with 5 carbons, that is the pent. Of course, I'm not supposed to leave a space there. Pentanoic acid. So that is how it's going to be named for this one. Let's see if we can get another one. How do we get to name this compound? Well, our group of highest priorities here, that's the carboxyl, so this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 there. So the name at position number 2, we have got a methyl. Methyl comes first in the alphabetical order than O. Position number 4, we have got oxo, 5 carbons, pentanoic acid. So that is going to be the name for this one. Well, I think that is going to be all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope that was helpful. Enjoy your day.